I first heard the name Ravager on Vega Prime. The station was enormous, built around a central starship nexus and crowded with representatives from dozens of civilizations. Ancient empires had maintained embassies there for thousands of years. Humanity had only recently been given a seat. I was there as an engineer, repairing power systems. Nobody important knew my name. That changed when the council began discussing the Ravager. For more than 300 years, every major civilization had tried to kill it. None had succeeded. The creature had survived weapons that could destroy warships, containment systems designed by civilizations older than humanity, and repeated attempts to study its biology. They called it a biological weapon of nature, the most dangerous predator in known space. I remember standing in a maintenance corridor, holding a diagnostic tool, while the council announcement echoed through the station. Containment procedures remain active. Then the lights flickered. Caro, another human technician, looked at me. Something happened, he said. He was right. We just didn't know yet that the Ravager had escaped. And we didn't know that its next hunting ground would be New Haven. More importantly, we didn't know that I would eventually become the first thing in 300 years that killed it. I was supposed to spend 3 days on New Haven. That was what the work order said. The colony had reported intermittent failures in its power distribution network, and my team had been sent to inspect the central relays. Nothing unusual, nothing dangerous, at least, nothing that had been included in the briefing. We landed shortly after dawn. From orbit, New Haven had looked dead. On the ground, it looked abandoned. The landing platform was intact, but nobody was waiting for us. The terminal lights were still operating. Cargo containers stood where they had been left. A service vehicle sat beside the main road with one door open. I stepped onto the platform with my repair case in one hand. "Where is everyone?" one of the technicians asked. Nobody answered. We entered the colony. The first thing I noticed was the silence. New Haven normally had thousands of small sounds, ventilation systems, transport carts, machinery, voices, doors opening and closing. Now there was only the low hum of emergency power. My team leader contacted the colony administrator. No response. He tried security. Nothing. Medical. Nothing. Then the emergency channel opened. A woman's voice came through, distorted by interference. "Do not approach the northern containment sector." My team leader froze. "Who is this?" Static. Then the voice returned. The Ravager escaped. The transmission ended. Nobody moved for several seconds. I had heard the word before. Everyone had. But hearing it spoken on an empty colony was different. We reached the central security station 20 minutes later. Its doors had been forced open from the inside. The walls were marked with deep scratches. Not weapon damage, claw marks. The security terminal contained one surviving recording. I watched it twice. The camera showed the containment corridor. Several alien security officers were retreating toward the blast doors. Behind them came something large and dark, moving on 4 powerful limbs. It did not run. It walked. Calmly. The officers opened fire. The creature kept coming. One disappeared beneath it. Another was thrown against the wall hard enough to crack the armor. The last officer reached the door. The Ravager reached him first. The recording ended. Nobody on my team spoke. Then alarms began sounding throughout the colony. A calm automated voice repeated the same instruction every 20 seconds. "Evacuation protocol active. Proceed to designated departure zones." People began appearing from the buildings. Scientists, families, technicians, children. They were frightened, confused, and moving too slowly. I looked toward the northern sector. Something screamed in the distance. Then another sound answered it. Closer. My team leader turned toward the evacuation route. "Move." We moved. I thought the danger was behind us. I was wrong. The Ravager was not chasing the colony. It was hunting, and it had already decided what it wanted. The evacuation order came before anyone could argue. I was helping load injured colonists onto a transport when I heard the second alarm. It was different from the first. The tone was lower, slower, and repeated every 5 seconds. Security breach in residential sector. I looked toward the colony's eastern buildings. That was where the children were kept during emergency evacuations. Where are the security teams? I asked. The officer beside me shook his head. Gone. How many? All of them. A Baron military officer approached, armor scorched and one arm hanging uselessly at his side. You need to leave now, he told me. I know. No, you don't understand. The Ravager has crossed the inner perimeter. How long? Maybe 3 minutes. I looked toward the residential sector. The officer followed my eyes. Don, there are people over there. The evacuation teams are already gone. Not everyone. He grabbed my shoulder. Human, listen to me. That creature killed 12 trained hunters this morning. It tore through a reinforced barrier designed to stop armored vehicles. If you go there, you will die. I pulled his hand away. Maybe, you cannot fight it. I wasn't planning to. Then what are you doing? I didn't answer. I was already moving. The residential building was half dark when I entered. Emergency lights painted the corridor red. Somewhere above me, metal screamed. I followed the sound of crying. I found 6 children hiding inside a storage room. They were between 5 and 10 years old. 2 were injured. One was holding a torn blanket against her chest. They stared at me as if I had come to rescue them. I wished I could promise that. Come on, I said. The oldest child shook his head. Mom said we have to stay here. Your mother was right. I looked toward the corridor. She's also not here anymore. The child began crying. I crouched in front of him. We're leaving. Behind me, something struck the outer wall. Dust fell from the ceiling. The children screamed. I stood. The Baron officer appeared at the doorway. You're out of time. I looked at the children. Then at him. Draw it away. His expression changed. No, if it's hunting us, let it hunt me. He stared at me as though I had spoken in a language he did not understand. Perhaps I had. I led the children toward the evacuation tunnel. Behind us, something entered the building. I heard its footsteps. Slow, heavy, getting closer. I heard the Ravager enter the corridor behind me. It did not roar. That was the first thing that frightened me. I had expected something loud, something that announced itself. Instead, I heard 4 heavy footsteps. Then silence. Then another 4. The children were moving as quickly as they could through the evacuation tunnel. I stayed behind them, carrying the youngest girl because she had injured her ankle. Keep going, I told the others. The oldest boy looked back. What about you? I'll be right behind you. It was not a promise I was certain I could keep. We reached the maintenance junction. The evacuation tunnel continued toward the eastern landing field, but the main door was sealed. I tried the control panel. Dead, of course, I muttered. The colony had lost power to half its systems. I opened my repair case. The children watched silently while I removed the panel cover and connected a portable power cell. Behind us, the footsteps stopped. I looked up. Nothing. Then I saw 2 dark shapes at the end of the corridor. Eyes. The Ravager stood there. It was larger than I had imagined. Its body was covered in thick black-gray hide, scarred from hundreds of previous attempts to kill it. 4 limbs supported its enormous weight, each ending in curved claws. It looked at me, not the children. Me. I understood something then. It had noticed me. The portable power cell sparked. The door opened. Go. The children ran. I shoved the youngest toward them and turned back. The Ravager moved. I ran. Not toward the evacuation field. Toward the old maintenance station on the edge of the colony. I knew the station had an independent power system. It had been abandoned years earlier, but emergency equipment was still stored there. The Ravager followed. I could hear it behind me. Closer. Faster. I reached the station and slammed the door behind me. For 3 seconds, there was silence. Then the door buckled inward. I moved quickly. The old station was exactly what I remembered from the colony maps. Damaged consoles, emergency beacons, spare cables, and a gravity generator that had been marked for replacement 6 years earlier. I opened the generator housing. The system was damaged, but not dead. That was enough. I didn't need a weapon. I needed something I understood. I pulled the generator apart. Outside, the Ravager struck the door again. Metal bent. I checked the power readings. The generator could still produce short gravitational pulses. Not enough to kill anything. Enough to move it. I began connecting cables. The Ravager hit the door a third time. The hinges screamed. I kept working. I had no military training. No special weapon. No plan for killing the most dangerous predator in the galaxy. I only had a broken gravity generator, a handful of tools, and the knowledge that machines usually obeyed the laws of physics. I just needed the Ravager to do the same. The generator was older than I was. Its outer casing had been corroded by years of neglect, and half the control circuits were dead. But the core still responded when I fed it power. I checked the readings again. Gravitational pulse. Unstable. Range. 32 meters. Duration. 0.8 seconds. It wasn't much. But I didn't need much. I needed to make the Ravager turn. I connected the emergency beacon to the generator and programmed it to transmit a repeating signal from the opposite side of the station. The pulse would create a brief distortion in the local gravity field. Anything approaching the station would be pushed sideways. Hopefully, the Ravager would follow the distortion. I finished the connection. The door behind me moved. Slowly, a claw appeared through the gap. Then another. The metal screamed as the Ravager pulled the door open. I stepped backward. It entered the room. Up close, it was worse. Its body was covered in old scars. Some were deep enough to expose pale tissue beneath the hide. One section of its neck carried a circular burn mark that looked like it had been made by a military plasma weapon. The Ravager looked at me. I activated the generator. The station shook. For a fraction of a second, the air seemed to bend. The creature moved sideways. It recovered almost immediately. I stared at the display. The pulse had worked, just not well enough. The Ravager lowered its head. Then it charged. I ran. The station was destroyed behind me as the creature tore through the equipment. Consoles exploded. Cables snapped. The gravity generator collapsed beneath the impact. I reached the exterior access corridor. The evacuation field was visible through the reinforced glass. The transport ships were already lifting off. I hit the emergency door controls. Nothing. The Ravager had damaged the power system. I was trapped. I looked through the glass. The last transport disappeared into the clouds. Then I heard breathing behind me. I turned. The Ravager stood at the end of the corridor. It was no longer moving slowly. It had learned. It knew the trap. It knew the station. And somehow, it knew me. I backed away. The creature stepped forward. I grabbed a broken length of metal from the floor. It wasn't a weapon. It was barely even useful as a tool. But it was all I had. The Ravager opened its jaws. I could see rows of teeth. For the first time that day, I understood that I might actually die. Not fighting. Not saving anyone. Just because I had made one mistake. I had assumed the Ravager was following me because I was in its way. I was wrong. It had been following me because it wanted me. I raised the metal bar. The Ravager stopped. For 1 second, neither of us moved. Then it came forward. I swung. The bar struck its shoulder and bounced away. The impact nearly broke my wrist. The Ravager barely noticed. It hit me with one forelimb. I flew across the corridor and struck the wall hard enough to lose my breath. For several seconds, I could not move. I heard the creature approaching. Slow footsteps. 1, 2, 3. I tried to stand. My left leg worked. My right arm didn't. The Ravager lowered its head. I saw its mouth open. I rolled away just before it struck. Its teeth closed on empty air. I crawled toward the maintenance hatch. The creature turned. It was faster than anything that large had a right to be. I barely had time to raise my arm. The jaws closed around it. Pain erased everything. I screamed. The teeth penetrated my suit and sank deep into my forearm. I felt pressure first, then heat, then something wet running beneath the torn fabric. The Ravager pulled. I struck its face with my free hand. Once, twice. It released me. I fell backward. My arm was covered in blood. The Ravager stood over me. For several seconds, it simply watched. Then something changed. The creature's breathing became uneven. Its head moved slightly to one side. I thought it was preparing to attack again. Instead, it stepped backward. I stared at it. What? The Ravager staggered. Its front leg buckled. Dark patches began spreading beneath its hide. It shook its head violently. A low sound came from its throat. Not anger, pain. The creature took another step backward. Then another. I pressed my hand against my arm and watched in confusion. The Ravager suddenly collapsed. Its enormous body struck the floor with enough force to shake the corridor. I didn't move. Neither did it. For perhaps 10 seconds, there was complete silence. Then my emergency communicator activated. A voice came through. Jake, do you copy? It was one of the evacuation drones. I reached for the communicator with my good hand. I copy. Your biometric readings are unstable. Medical assistance is being dispatched. I looked at the creature lying 3 meters away. There's something you should know. What? The Ravager is down. A pause. Is it dead? I looked at the animal. Its chest moved once, then stopped. I don't know. The drone's medical scanner activated. A beam passed over the body. The result appeared on my visor. No cardiac activity. I stared at the words. The Ravager was dead. The most dangerous predator in the galaxy had bitten me. And somehow, I was still alive. Then the scanner produced another result. Unknown biological reaction detected. I looked down at my bleeding arm. For the first time, I wondered whether the Ravager had made a mistake. Maybe it had not found its prey. Maybe it had found something that could kill it. The medical team arrived 12 minutes later. By then, I was sitting against the wall with my injured arm wrapped in a pressure seal. I had lost a lot of blood, but I was conscious. The medics entered wearing sealed suits. None of them approached the Ravager. They stopped several meters away. One of them raised a scanner. Confirming target, she said. The scanner produced a series of warnings. Extreme cellular degradation. Another medic looked at the display. What caused this? I don't know. The first medic scanned me. Her expression changed. Your blood chemistry is abnormal. I am injured. That isn't the injury. She scanned me again. Then a third time. Something is happening inside your bloodstream. I looked at the dead creature. What? I don't know yet. The medical drone hovering above us transmitted the data to the orbital station. Within seconds, additional scientists began accessing the readings. The Ravager's cells were breaking down. Not slowly, rapidly. Its immune system was destroying itself. The same biological compounds that made the creature almost impossible to kill were reacting violently with something inside my blood. The scientists initially assumed contamination. Then they tested the samples again. The result was identical. A research team arrived from orbit. They ignored me at first. Every instrument was pointed at the Ravager. For 3 centuries, scientists had studied that creature without finding a reliable weakness. Now its body was revealing one. Me. One scientist finally approached. Mr. Miller, we need a blood sample. You can have one. He hesitated. Are you certain? Yes. He looked surprised by the answer. I didn't understand why. It was blood. I had more questions than they did. Why had the Ravager retreated? Why had it attacked me? Why had its body collapsed after the bite? And why did my arm, despite the depth of the wounds, already feel better? The medic noticed that too. Your tissue is regenerating. How quickly? She looked at the scanner. Faster than anything I've ever seen. The room became silent. A second medical drone scanned the wound. The torn muscle was closing. The bleeding had almost stopped. I stared at my arm. Then I looked at the dead predator. For centuries, The galaxy had believed the Ravager was the final expression of biological aggression. They had studied its teeth, its muscles, its metabolism, its ability to survive almost anything. Nobody had seriously studied what happened when the Ravager encountered humanity. That changed on New Haven. Within an hour, my blood was being analyzed in laboratories across the galaxy. Within 3 hours, the first preliminary reports reached Vega Prime. By nightfall, every major government had heard the same impossible conclusion. The Ravager could kill almost anything. But whatever lived inside human blood could kill the Ravager. And for the first time, the galaxy began asking a question that had never occurred to anyone before. What exactly had humanity evolved to survive? By the time I woke, New Haven was no longer a local emergency. It was a galactic incident. I learned that from the number of people standing outside my medical room. 3 security officers, 2 scientists, a diplomatic representative, and an entire medical team watching me through the transparent wall as if I had become a dangerous specimen. I sat up, my arm, functional, the medic said. I looked at the bandage. There was almost no blood beneath it. How long was I unconscious? 4 hours. I looked toward the window. Where is the Ravager? Dead. I already knew that. What happened to the colony? Most civilians were evacuated. Most? She hesitated. We are still searching. I nodded. That was all I could say. A few minutes later, the diplomatic representative entered. He was a tall, thin creature with silver skin and 4 eyes arranged vertically across his face. His formal clothing carried the insignia of the Galactic Council. Jake Miller, he said. Yes, I am Ambassador Terrell. I waited. He looked uncomfortable. That was unusual for an ambassador. You understand what happened? Not completely. No, neither do we. He placed a small device on the table. A holographic image appeared. The Ravager, dead. Its enormous body was surrounded by scientific markings and biological readings. For 317 years, Terrell said, the Council has classified this organism as the most dangerous biological entity in known space. I know. We have attempted to destroy it with methods developed by civilizations vastly older than yours. I know. You survived its bite. I looked at him. So far, his 4 eyes narrowed. That is precisely the problem. The hologram changed. My blood appeared. Your immune response is unlike anything recorded in our databases. The Ravager's biological systems are extremely aggressive. Every known species exposed to its tissue experiences catastrophic cellular failure. And humans? We appear to respond differently. Why? We don't know. That answer seemed to bother him more than anything else. He leaned closer. We require permission to obtain additional samples. You can have some. His expression changed. Under Council authority, we require more than samples. I understood then. They wanted everything. My blood, human tissue, genetic records, perhaps eventually human volunteers. I looked through the glass at the scientists waiting outside. No, I said. Terrell remained silent. Humanity will provide medical information necessary to protect other civilizations, I continued. But we allow our biology to become a weapon. You misunderstand the importance of this discovery. No, I understand it exactly. He stared at me. For the first time, I saw something I had never seen in an alien diplomat before. Fear. Not fear of me. Fear of what humanity might be. The meeting ended without agreement. But the galaxy had already begun changing. And somewhere inside the Council archives, scientists were opening the oldest human records they could find. They were looking for an answer. They would find one. It was more than 1,000 years old. The Council did not tell me what they found. I learned about it 3 days later. By then, New Haven had been placed under permanent quarantine. Scientists occupied the colony's laboratories. Security forces guarded the Ravager's remains, and my name had appeared in reports transmitted to every major civilization in the galaxy. I was not permitted to leave. Nobody called it imprisonment. They called it medical observation. I called it waiting. On the 4th morning, Ambassador Terrell returned. This time, he brought an archivist. She was an old member of the Athel species, small and thin, with pale skin and enormous black eyes. She carried no weapons and wore no diplomatic insignia. She simply placed an ancient data crystal on my table. "We found this in your historical archives," she said. I looked at Terrell. "Human archives? No." That caught my attention. The archivist activated the crystal. A recording appeared. It was badly damaged, more than 1,000 years old. The image showed a group of human explorers standing inside what appeared to be an underground facility. I recognized the uniforms. They were not modern. The equipment wasn't either. But they were human. One of them was speaking. "We have confirmed contact with the organism." The recording distorted. Another voice replied. "How many?" "3. Casualties?" "2. The archivist paused the recording. Terrell looked at me. "This facility was discovered beneath an uninhabited moon 12 years ago. Your species had no record of it." I stared at the frozen image. The people on the screen looked ordinary. Engineers, scientists, explorers, not soldiers. The recording continued. A human woman appeared beside the first speaker. Her face was covered in blood. "We cannot contain them. Then withdraw." "We tried." She looked directly into the camera. "They follow us." The image shook. Something struck the wall behind her. The recording ended. I sat quietly. Terrell finally spoke. "The organism in that recording has the same genetic structure as the Ravager." I looked at him. "So humans encountered it before?" "Yes." "How long ago?" 1,014 years. Nobody spoke. I thought about the Ravager on New Haven. The scars covering its body. The way it had recognized me. The way it had followed me instead of the other colonists. Then I remembered something the scientists had overlooked. The creature had not attacked me immediately. It had watched me. It had studied me. Perhaps it remembered something that humanity itself had forgotten. The archivist lowered her eyes. "There is another entry." She activated the final fragment. A human voice whispered through static. "We survived." A pause. "Barely." Then, "Whatever these creatures are, they are not invincible." The recording ended. I stared at the dark screen. For 3 centuries, the galaxy had studied the Ravager. They had measured its strength, catalogued its biology, and feared its existence. But humanity had encountered something similar more than 1,000 years earlier. And somehow, we had survived. I looked at Terrell. "Why didn't anyone know about this?" He did not answer immediately. Then he said quietly, "Because your ancestors apparently decided nobody needed to know." That answer stayed with me. The galaxy had spent centuries asking how to kill the Ravager. Humanity had apparently spent centuries learning how to survive it. We had simply forgotten to tell anyone. I remained on New Haven for another 6 days. Officially, I was recovering. In reality, I was being studied. Every morning, scientists took blood samples. They measured my temperature, cellular regeneration, immune response, and dozens of other things I couldn't pronounce. They asked me questions about my childhood, my diet, my work, and whether I had ever experienced unusual illnesses. I answered honestly. The strange thing was that I felt normal. My arm had healed completely. There was a thin scar where the Ravager had bitten me, but nothing else remained. The scientists were not satisfied. Neither was the Galactic Council. On the 7th day, Ambassador Terrell entered my room carrying a sealed document. "We have reached a decision," he said. I looked at him. "What decision?" "The Council has formally recognized humanity as a subject of strategic biological interest." "That sounds unpleasant." "It is." He placed the document on the table. 29 civilizations have requested access to human genetic material. 11 have proposed joint research programs. 4 have suggested compulsory cooperation. Compulsory? Yes. I looked at him for a moment. What did humanity's representative say? Terrell hesitated. She refused. I smiled slightly. That sounds like us. It caused considerable disagreement, I imagine. He sat down. There is something else. He activated the document. A list appeared. Every major civilization that had attempted to destroy the Ravager had failed. Every species that had been bitten had died. Except humans. The Council had compared my blood with archived samples from other human populations. The reaction was universal. Every tested human sample demonstrated some variation of the same biological resistance. I stared at the results. So it wasn't just me. No. Terrell's voice became quieter. Your species possesses this naturally. I leaned back. For the first time, I understood why the Council was frightened. It wasn't because humans had killed the Ravager. It was because we had done it without trying. There had been no weapon. No military program. No secret laboratory. A predator had attacked a human being. And human biology had answered on its own. The galaxy had spent centuries trying to defeat the Ravager through technology. Humanity had simply survived it. Terrell looked at me. Do you understand what this means? I thought about New Haven. The children. The empty colony. The creature following me through the corridors. Then I looked at the Council document. It means you should stop trying to turn us into a weapon. He was silent. I stood and walked to the window. New Haven's sun was rising beyond the horizon. For the first time since I had arrived, the colony looked peaceful. But somewhere far beyond that sunrise, 47 civilizations were beginning to reconsider what they knew about humanity. And they were only beginning. The Council meeting lasted 9 hours. I wasn't there. I watched the recording afterward from a small medical room on New Haven, sitting beneath a window while 47 representatives argued about my blood. The debate had divided the galaxy. Some wanted samples for medical research. Others wanted to develop treatments against the Ravager. Several governments wanted something more direct. Weapons. One delegate argued that human blood could be engineered into a biological defense system. Another proposed distributing modified human immune compounds to military forces. A third suggested that humanity had a moral obligation to provide its biology to civilizations that might otherwise die from future Ravager outbreaks. The human representative listened to all of them. Then she stood. Her name was Ambassador Elena Ward. She was older than me, calm, and completely unimpressed by the chamber around her. Humanity understands your concern, she said. We also understand the potential medical value of our biological traits. That is why we are willing to cooperate with research intended to protect civilian populations. The chamber quieted. But we will not provide unrestricted access to human genetic material. Several delegates protested immediately. Elena waited. We will not permit our blood to become a weapon. A Keelan representative rose. You cannot deny the galaxy access to a biological defense capable of saving billions. We can, Elena replied. Because it belongs to humanity. You speak of responsibility. We agree. Responsibility includes refusing to create another catastrophe. The chamber became silent. Elena continued. You spent 300 years trying to destroy the Ravager. You failed. You tried weapons. You failed. You tried containment. You failed. Then a human was bitten, and the animal died. She paused. Perhaps the lesson is not that humanity has discovered a better weapon. Perhaps the lesson is that you should stop looking at every biological discovery as something to weaponize. I watched the recording twice. The Council did not like the answer. But nobody laughed. That mattered. For generations, humanity had been treated as a minor civilization. Young, small, physically unimpressive. Now every major laboratory wanted to understand us. And every military government wanted to know whether our biology could be turned against someone else. Humanity refused both extremes. We would share medical research. We would cooperate against future Ravager outbreaks. But our blood would remain ours. After the meeting, Elena received hundreds of diplomatic messages. Most demanded reconsideration. Some contained threats. She answered none of them. Instead, she sent one message to every government that had requested human biological samples. It contained only 2 sentences. We survived because our biology belongs to us. We intend to keep it that way. The discovery of the ancient expedition changed everything. Until then, the Council had believed the Ravager incident was an isolated biological accident. It was not. The old recording proved that humans had encountered organisms genetically related to the Ravager more than 1,000 years earlier. That meant humanity had known about them before the Council had even documented the species. The question was why nobody remembered. I was transferred to Vega Prime 2 weeks later. The station looked different this time. Or perhaps I did. Aliens no longer ignored me in the corridors. Some watched openly. Others moved aside when I approached. Scientists asked questions whenever they were permitted to speak with me. I found the attention uncomfortable. I still preferred repairing machines. Unfortunately, nobody was interested in letting me return to maintenance. The Council had opened a historical investigation. They searched human archives, abandoned colonies, military databases, and archaeological sites. The results were disturbing. Humanity had encountered several dangerous organisms during its early expansion. Some had been classified as extinct. Others had been abandoned on isolated worlds. A few had simply disappeared from human records. The oldest references were incomplete, but one pattern appeared repeatedly. When humans encountered something capable of killing them, they did not always destroy it. Sometimes they studied it, sometimes they learned from it, and sometimes they simply survived and moved on. The Ravager had not been humanity's first encounter. It had only been the first one the galaxy witnessed. I was shown another recovered document. It was written by a human expedition commander nearly 11 centuries earlier. The final surviving entry contained only a few lines. The organism is extremely aggressive. Direct engagement is unnecessary. Avoid contact where possible. Then, beneath those words, someone had added a handwritten note. If contact occurs, survive first. Understand it later. I read that sentence several times. It sounded completely ordinary. That was what unsettled the Council. To them, the Ravager represented an existential threat. To my ancestors, apparently, it had been another problem that required preparation. The galaxy had built entire scientific institutions around studying the creature. Humans had apparently encountered something similar, recorded the danger, developed procedures, and continued living. Nobody had considered that significant. The Council archivist finally asked me the question everyone had been avoiding. Mr. Miller, how much does your species know about these organisms? I thought about it. I don't know. She looked disappointed. Then I added, but if our ancestors encountered them before, someone may still remember. Where? I looked at the ancient document. Earth. The room became silent, because for the first time, the Council understood that the answer might not be hidden in a laboratory. It might be buried beneath human history, and humanity had been walking past it for centuries. The search began on Earth. I was there when the first excavation team opened the underground facility. It was buried beneath a mountain range, far from every modern city. The entrance had been sealed for centuries, hidden behind layers of rock and construction that had accumulated over generations. Nobody knew who had built it. The oldest records suggested that the facility predated humanity's first confirmed faster than light flight. That alone should have been impossible. Inside, we found laboratories. Not ruins. Laboratories. The power systems were dead, but the structure remained intact. Old equipment lined the walls. Storage chambers contained sealed biological samples. Some had degraded beyond recognition. Others had not. The scientists worked in silence. I watched through a protective window as they opened the largest chamber. Inside was a metal container. Its surface carried a symbol I recognized immediately. A human warning mark. Biological hazard. Beneath it were several words in an ancient form of English. Ravager class. Do not release. Nobody spoke. One scientist finally whispered, they knew. Yes, I said. The Council representatives standing behind me looked shaken. The container was opened remotely. Inside was a collection of old reports. The first described the organism. The second described its behavior. The third described its weaknesses. There were hundreds of pages. Humanity had studied the creature. Not just encountered it. studied it. The reports explained that the organism possessed an extremely aggressive metabolism. It could regenerate tissue rapidly, tolerate enormous physical trauma, and survive environments that killed most known organisms. But there was one observation that caught everyone's attention. A human expedition member had been bitten, just as I had been. The report described the same reaction. The Ravager had become sick. Its organs had failed. It had died within minutes. The human had survived. I stared at the document. For a long time, nobody moved. Then the lead scientist found the final entry. It was written by the expedition commander. Human subjects demonstrate natural resistance. Do not attempt to weaponize this trait. Do not reproduce the organism. Do not disclose findings outside authorized human archives. Then came the final sentence. Future civilizations may misunderstand what this means. I read it twice. The council representative beside me whispered, "They predicted this." "No," I said. He looked at me. "They didn't predict us." I looked through the glass at the ancient laboratory. "They predicted you." That was the moment the council finally understood. Humanity had not forgotten the Ravager because the encounter was unimportant. We had forgotten because our ancestors had already decided that surviving it was enough. The galaxy had spent centuries searching for the creature's weakness. Humans had discovered it more than 1,000 years earlier. Then we had simply closed the door and moved on. I returned to Vega Prime 6 months later. The council had changed, not physically. The crystal chamber was still there. The ancient representatives still occupied their ceremonial seats, and the same flags hung above them. But humanity's seat was no longer near the exit. Nobody had moved it. They had simply stopped treating us as insignificant. I stood there when the final report was presented. The Ravager had been classified as a confirmed biological threat. Human resistance was classified as a natural evolutionary trait. And the ancient encounter was sealed beneath the highest level of council security. I did not care about the classifications. I cared about what came next. Humanity agreed to share medical research, but refused every request to weaponize our biology. The galaxy accepted the decision, mostly because nobody wanted to discover what would happen if humanity stopped cooperating. Before I left the chamber, an ancient representative approached me. He was older than most civilizations represented there. "We studied the Ravager for 3 centuries, he said. I waited. He looked toward the council's human delegation. "Then you arrived." I said nothing. His voice became quieter. "We believed the Ravager was the most dangerous prey in existence." He corrected himself. "Predator." Then he looked directly at me. "We were wrong." Years later, the recording of my encounter remained in council archives. The final image showed me walking away from the dead Ravager, my injured arm already healing. Beneath it, someone had added a single historical note. "The most dangerous predator in known space bit a human. The predator died." I never considered myself dangerous. I was an engineer. I repaired machines. I went home. But the galaxy had finally learned what humanity had forgotten. The Ravager was built to kill. Humans were built to survive. And sometimes, survival was more dangerous than any weapon.